Envelope thuds. I kneel on marble beneath the cake table. Photos cut my fingers. Adam kissing Patricia, 20 feet from his bride. 43 years teaching. He steals $85,000. Ethan, 9, whispers, "Don't let anyone see." I'm 69, invisible, holding a secret, $1.2 million, 3 accounts. When I rise, his wedding ends. The envelope hit the floor with a soft thud, and my hands trembled as I crouched under that decorated table in the middle of my son's wedding reception. The photos scattered like fallen leaves, image after image of Adam kissing Patricia, his real estate assistant, while his bride, Fernanda, danced just 20 feet away, believing she'd married for love. My grandson, Ethan, only 9 years old, had just whispered the words that would change everything. "Grandma, look under the table, but don't let anyone see." And there I was, Helen Morrison, 69 years old, former elementary school teacher, kneeling on the cold marble floor of Seattle's fanciest hotel, discovering that my own son was a fraud. But what nobody in that room knew, what Adam had no idea about, was that I had $1.2 million hidden in 3 separate accounts. 43 years of teaching. 43 years of brown bag lunches and hand-me-down coats. 43 years of everyone thinking I was just another broke retiree living on Social Security. I was about to destroy his life. The music swelled around me as I stuffed those photos back into the envelope, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. Fernanda was at the head table, radiant in her white dress, laughing at something her maid of honor had said. She had no idea she'd just signed her financial death warrant. "I'm so happy you're here listening to this story. You know, when I decided to tell this, I wasn't sure anyone would believe that a grandmother could take down her own son so completely. If you've ever had family betray you, or if you know someone who needs to hear that it's possible to fight back, please hit that like button. While I tell you the rest, if you could subscribe to the channel, it would help me so much. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? I want to know how far these stories are reaching. Now let me tell you exactly what happened when I realized my 9-year-old grandson had just handed me the ammunition to wage war. I stood up slowly, smoothing my navy dress, and walked back to my table as if nothing had happened. But inside, every nerve was on fire. The photos were dated, recent, some from last week, some from yesterday, the day before Adam's wedding. Ethan was sitting next to me, his little bow tie slightly crooked, picking at his wedding cake with unusual focus. When our eyes met, I saw something that broke my heart. Fear. This child, who should be worried about nothing more than whether he'd get extra dessert, was carrying the weight of adult betrayal. "How did you find these?" I whispered. His voice was barely audible over the jazz quartet. "I was playing on Daddy's computer yesterday. He left his email open. There were more pictures. And money stuff." Money stuff. My blood went cold. "What kind of money stuff, sweetheart?" Ethan glanced around nervously, then leaned closer. He took money from Fernanda's account, lots of money, and there was a paper he printed that looked important. I hid it in my backpack. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Not only was Adam cheating, he was stealing from his new wife. I looked across the room at Patricia, Adam's assistant, sitting at table 7 with her mother and stepfather. She wore a silver dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her smile radiant as she watched the man she was secretly sleeping with dance with his bride. That smile, so confident, so assured, like she already knew how this story would end, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. You see, everyone at this wedding saw Helen Morrison, the retired teacher. Helen Morrison, who drove a 15-year-old Honda Civic. Helen Morrison, who clipped coupons and wore the same black purse she'd owned for a decade. What they didn't see was Helen Morrison, who had invested every spare penny for 4 decades. Helen Morrison, who owned 2 rental properties downtown. Helen Morrison, who had been planning her comfortable retirement while everyone assumed she was struggling. I'd been invisible to my own son for years. When his father died 15 years ago, Adam barely called. When I mentioned maybe traveling or updating my kitchen, he'd changed the subject. In his mind, I was just another burden he'd eventually have to carry. Tonight, he was about to learn exactly how wrong he'd been. The DJ announced the father-son dance, and I watched Adam take the microphone. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom. Especially my beautiful wife Fernanda, who makes me want to be a better man. Liar. The word burned in my throat. As he spoke, I noticed Fernanda's parents at the head table, Maria and Carlos, who had flown in from Colombia and spent their life savings on this wedding. They sat proudly, believing their daughter had married into a good American family. They had no idea their life savings had paid for a celebration of fraud. And Fernanda herself, God, she was radiant, 28 years old, with dreams of starting a family, building a life. She'd told me just yesterday how excited she was to combine their bank accounts, how she'd already moved her savings, all $85,000 she'd inherited from her grandmother, into their joint account as a gesture of trust. Adam had cleaned it out 2 days later. The dance ended, and I excused myself, telling Ethan I needed some air. But instead of going to the terrace, I walked purposefully toward the hotel's business center. My hands were steady now. My mind was crystal clear. I had work to do. The business center was empty, except for a desk clerk who looked half asleep. I sat at one of the computers and logged into my email account, the one Adam didn't know existed, the one connected to my investment portfolio. As I typed, I thought about all those years of teaching, all those parent conferences where I had to deliver difficult truths, all those times I had to stand in front of a classroom and maintain order when chaos threatened to take over. This was just another lesson plan. Except this time, my student was my own son. I drafted 3 emails. The first was to my attorney, Gerald Hoffman, who I'd worked with when buying my rental properties. The second was to Fernanda's cousin, Miguel, who was a paralegal and had given me his card earlier. The third was to my old friend Janet, who worked at the Seattle Times. The photos from the envelope were already uploaded to my cloud storage. The bank records that Ethan had mentioned would be collected tomorrow. By Monday morning, Adam's world would be burning from 3 different directions. But first, I needed to make sure Fernanda was protected. I walked back to the reception, where the party was in full swing. The bride and groom were making their rounds, thanking guests, taking photos. Adam looked so handsome in his tuxedo, so confident. He had no idea that in 24 hours he'd lose his real estate license, his wife, and his freedom. I approached Fernanda during a quiet moment when she was touching up her lipstick near the ladies' room. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "could we talk privately for just a moment?" She smiled, that trusting smile that made my heart ache. "Of course, Helen. Is everything okay?" I guided her into an empty conference room next to the ballroom. The music was muffled here, but we could still hear the celebration continuing without us. "Fernanda, what I'm about to tell you will be the hardest thing you'll ever hear, but you need to know before this goes any further." Her smile faded. "What do you mean?" I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. "My grandson found these. And there's more, much more." As I spread the photos on the conference table, I watched her face transform. Confusion gave way to understanding. Understanding gave way to horror. And horror gave way to something I'd never seen in her before. Rage. "How long?" she whispered. "At least 6 months from what I can tell." "And Fernanda," I took her hands, which were ice cold. "He's been stealing from your joint account. The money your grandmother left you? It's gone." The sound she made wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a scream. It was something primal, the sound of a heart breaking in real time. "But why are you telling me this?" she asked. "He's your son." I looked into her eyes. This beautiful young woman who had called me Mom from the day they got engaged, who had spent hours helping me plant tomatoes in my garden, who had never been anything but kind and respectful. "Because," I said quietly, "some things are more important than blood." Fernanda sat in that conference room chair like a statue, the wedding photos scattered before her like evidence at a crime scene. Her mascara had started to run, creating thin black trails down her cheeks, but she hadn't moved to wipe them away. She just stared at the images, her new husband's mouth on another woman's neck, his hands tangled in Patricia's blonde hair, his wedding ring clearly visible as he gripped Patricia's waist in what was obviously a hotel room. "These were taken yesterday," I said softly, pointing to the timestamp on one particularly damning photo. "The day before your wedding. While you were getting your nails done for the ceremony." Fernanda's voice came out as a broken whisper. "Yesterday morning, He told me he had to run errands for the wedding. Last-minute details. She picked up one of the photos with trembling fingers. He was buying her lingerie. I can see the Victoria's Secret bag in the background. The bitter irony hit us both at the same time. While Fernanda had been preparing to become his wife, Adam had been preparing to betray her. "Fernanda, I need you to listen to me very carefully," I said, pulling my chair closer to hers. "This isn't just about the affair. Ethan found bank documents on Adam's computer. He's been stealing from your joint account." Her head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief. "That's impossible. I just checked our account 3 days ago. There was $85,000, my grandmother's inheritance." I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, opening the voice recorder app. "I need you to tell me everything you remember about your financial arrangements with Adam. Every detail. Because if I'm right, this goes much deeper than either of us realized." For the next 10 minutes, Fernanda recounted how Adam had convinced her to merge their finances immediately after the engagement, how he'd insisted on being the primary account holder for tax purposes, how he'd sweet-talked her into signing papers she hadn't read carefully, trusting him completely because he was, after all, a successful real estate agent who understood these things better. Every word she spoke made me angrier. My son had orchestrated a systematic financial seduction, targeting a trusting young woman with inherited money. This wasn't crime of passion. This was premeditated theft. "Helen," Fernanda said suddenly, gripping my arm with surprising strength. "What if he's done this before? What if I'm not the first?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Adam was 34 years old. He'd had serious relationships before Fernanda. And now that I thought about it, he'd always seemed to date women who were financially independent, women who had money of their own. "We need help," I said, standing up. "Professional help, and we need it tonight." I called Gerald Hoffman from that conference room, putting the phone on speaker so Fernanda could hear everything. Gerald had been my attorney for 12 years, ever since I'd started investing in real estate. He was the only person who knew the true extent of my financial situation. "Helen?" Gerald's voice was puzzled. "It's Saturday night. Is everything all right?" "Gerald, I'm at my son's wedding reception, and I've just discovered he's committed bank fraud against his new wife. I need you to meet us at your office in 1 hour." There was a pause. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" "I have photographic evidence of adultery and documentary evidence of theft, and I believe there may be more victims." "Jesus Christ, Helen." "Okay, I'll meet you at the office. Bring everything you have." As I hung up, Fernanda was staring at me with something approaching awe. "You're really going to help me destroy your own son?" I looked back at the photos on the table, then at this broken young woman who had been nothing but kind to me since the day Adam brought her home. "Fernanda, I raised my son to be honest and decent. If he's chosen to become a criminal, then he needs to face the consequences, and you need to be protected." We gathered up the evidence and prepared to leave, but first I needed to retrieve Ethan's backpack with the additional documents he'd printed. As we walked back toward the ballroom, I could hear the DJ announcing the bouquet toss. Through the doorway, I saw Fernanda's unmarried cousins gathering on the dance floor, laughing and jostling for position to catch the flowers that would supposedly bring them luck and love. The irony was devastating. I found Ethan sitting at our table, looking small and scared in his little tuxedo. When he saw Fernanda's tear-stained face, his eyes filled with worry. "Did I do something wrong, Grandma?" he whispered. I knelt down to his level, taking his small hands in mine. "Sweetheart, you did exactly the right thing. You're very brave. Now, do you still have that backpack with the papers you printed?" He nodded and reached under his chair, producing a small Spider-Man backpack. From inside, he pulled out a manila folder containing what looked like bank statements, email printouts, and several legal-looking documents. As I flipped through the papers, my heart sank further with each page. Account statements showing systematic withdrawals over the past 3 months. Email exchanges between Adam and Patricia discussing the plan and making sure she doesn't suspect anything. And most damning of all, a prenuptial agreement that had never been mentioned to Fernanda, one that would have protected Adam's assets while leaving her vulnerable. But there was something else in that folder that made my blood run cold. A printed email exchange between Adam and someone named Marcus Chen discussing the Colombian property deal and making sure the money is transferred before the wedding. Fernanda gasped when she saw it. Marcus Chen is my cousin's business partner in Bogota. They've been developing hotels there. Adam said he wanted to invest in their business as a wedding gift to my family. How much money were we talking about? I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. $200,000. Money from my trust fund that my parents set up when I was born. Adam said it would be a beautiful way to honor my heritage. The scope of Adam's deception was breathtaking. Not only had he stolen her inheritance, but he was planning to steal her trust fund and funnel it through what was probably a fake Colombian business deal. The wedding wasn't a celebration of love. It was the final step in an elaborate con game. Fernanda, I said quietly, how much money did you have access to before you met Adam? She calculated in her head, her face growing paler by the second. The inheritance from my grandmother, the trust fund, and my savings from working at the bank. About $450,000 total. Nearly $500,000. My son wasn't just a cheater and a thief. He was running a sophisticated long-term financial fraud operation. As we prepared to leave for Gerald's office, I took one last look back at the reception. Adam was on the dance floor with Patricia, who had apparently decided to stay for the entire celebration. They were dancing to At Last by Etta James, and Adam was whispering something in her ear that made her laugh. 20 feet away, Fernanda's parents were taking photos with relatives, still blissfully unaware that their daughter's marriage was already over. In 12 hours, this would all be national news. The photos, the documents, the scale of the deception. It was the kind of story that cable news networks loved. A real estate agent who turned his own wedding into a criminal enterprise. But first, we had to make sure Fernanda was protected and that Adam couldn't destroy any more evidence or transfer any more money. Are you ready for this? I asked Fernanda as we reached the hotel lobby. She straightened her shoulders, wiped the last of her tears, and looked me directly in the eye. I'm ready to fight. And I knew exactly who she reminded me of in that moment. Myself, 30 years ago, when I'd decided to stop being invisible and start building real power. Tomorrow, Adam would learn that his mother had been planning for this day longer than he'd been planning his crimes. Gerald Hoffman's law office at midnight looked like a war room. Files spread across his mahogany conference table, 3 laptops open, and the harsh fluorescent lights casting everything in stark relief. Fernanda sat across from me, her wedding dress replaced with jeans and a Seattle Mariners sweatshirt Gerald's secretary had found in the office closet. She looked younger without the makeup and elaborate hairstyle, young enough that the magnitude of Adam's deception seemed even more criminal. Before we go any further, Gerald said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, I need both of you to understand what we're dealing with here. This isn't just marriage problems or even simple theft. Based on these documents, Adam has committed wire fraud, identity theft, and possibly racketeering. We're talking about federal crimes with decades of prison time. Fernanda's voice was steady, harder than it had been 3 hours ago. Good. I want him in prison. Gerald pulled out a legal pad and began taking notes. Helen, you mentioned you have significant assets that Adam doesn't know about. We're going to need those details because if he's investigated, they'll look at family financial connections. For the next hour, I laid out my financial situation in detail. The $1, $2 million in investment accounts. The 2 rental properties downtown worth $800,000 combined. The life insurance payout from my husband's death that I'd never touched. By the time I finished, even Gerald looked surprised. Helen, he said slowly, you're worth over $2 million. Why have you been living like you're on a fixed income? Because I've been watching and waiting, I replied. Adam showed his true colors years ago when his father died. He never called, never helped, never even asked if I needed anything. He wrote me off as his burden in waiting. I wanted to see exactly what kind of man he'd become. Fernanda leaned forward. You've been testing him this whole time? Not testing, observing. And everything I've observed told me that someday he'd reveal himself completely. I just never imagined he'd target someone I cared about. Gerald's phone buzzed. That's my investigator. I called him on the way here. He answered and put it on speaker. Jake, what did you find? Jake Morrison's voice crackled through the speaker. Gerald, this is bigger than you thought. I ran preliminary checks on Adam Morrison's financial activity, and there are red flags everywhere. multiple large cash deposits over the past year that don't match his real estate commissions. 3 different LLCs registered in his name with questionable business purposes. And here's the kicker. He's been married before. The room went silent. Fernanda's face drained of color. Married before? Gerald asked. Recently? 2 years ago. A woman named Sarah Caldwell in Portland. Divorced after 18 months. But get this. She filed a police report for identity theft and bank fraud that was mysteriously dropped. I'm driving down to Portland tomorrow to interview her. Fernanda stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. He told me I was his first wife. He said he'd never found anyone worth marrying before me. Bomb 1. The Family Conspiracy. Gerald was typing rapidly on his laptop. Jake, dig deeper into the family connections. I want to know if anyone else was involved in these schemes. Already on it, Jake replied. And Gerald? You're going to want to hear this recording I got from a source at Adam's real estate office. The sound quality was poor, but the voices were unmistakable. Adam's voice and a woman's voice I recognized immediately. His business partner and pseudo-aunt, Diane Morrison, his father's sister. The Colombian investment is perfect, Diane's voice said through the static. Once she transfers that trust fund money, we split it 60-40 like we discussed. The beauty is, she'll never be able to prove it was stolen. The paperwork makes it look like a legitimate business investment. And if she gets suspicious? Adam's voice asked. By then, you'll be in Colombia for the honeymoon. You transfer the money to the shell company, we liquidate everything, and you disappear. She comes home to an empty account and a missing husband. Fernanda sank back into her chair. Diane helped plan our wedding. She's been like a mother to Adam since his father died. She knows my whole family. My hands were shaking with rage. Not only had Adam betrayed his wife, but he'd involved his aunt, a woman I'd trusted, a woman who'd sat at our family dinners, who'd helped me clean out my husband's belongings after he died. There's more, Jake continued. Diane Morrison has been running variations of this scam for at least 5 years. I found 2 other women in Seattle who lost significant money in Colombian real estate deals that she brokered. They never pressed charges because they were embarrassed and couldn't prove fraud. Bomb 2, the anticipated sale. Gerald was pulling up county records on his computer. Jake, while you're investigating, I need you to check something else. Helen, what's your home address? I gave him the address of the house I'd owned for 32 years, the house where I'd raised Adam, the house where Ethan and I still lived. Gerald's typing stopped. His face went white. Helen, he said carefully, according to King County records, your house was sold 3 weeks ago for $675,000. The buyer is listed as Pacific Northwest Development Group. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. I never signed anything. I never even put it on the market. Pacific Northwest Development Group, Gerald continued, is one of Adam's LLCs. Helen, your son forged your signature and sold your house out from under you. The room spun. 40 years of mortgage payments, 40 years of memories, the garden where I'd taught Ethan to plant tomatoes, the kitchen where I'd graded 10,000 homework assignments, the bedroom where my husband had died in my arms, gone. But we still live there, I whispered. Ethan and I were there this morning. You're probably in a grace period before the new owners take possession, Gerald explained. Helen, this means Adam has been planning this for months. He's not just stealing from Fernanda. He's been systematically liquidating anything connected to your family. Fernanda reached across the table and took my hand. I'm so sorry, Helen. This is all my fault. If I hadn't trusted him... No, I said firmly, my voice stronger than I felt. This is not your fault. This is what predators do. They make their victims feel responsible for the predator's crimes. Gerald was still typing. Jake, I need you to trace every property transaction Adam has been involved with in the past 2 years. If he sold Helen's house without her knowledge, there might be others. Already running those searches, Jake replied. And I have more bad news. I spoke to a friend at Seattle PD. There's been an insurance inquiry about Helen Morrison. Someone called 3 weeks ago asking about the procedures for claiming a life insurance policy in case of accidental death. Bomb 3. The insurance policy. The silence that followed was deafening. Gerald, Fernanda, and I stared at each other as the implications sank in. Gerald, I said slowly, I don't have a life insurance policy that Adam knows about. That's because he took one out on you. Gerald replied grimly, pulling up another screen. A $2 million term life policy through Pacific Life Insurance. The beneficiary is listed as Adam Morrison, son. The policy was activated 6 months ago. Fernanda gasped. 6 months ago was when Adam first mentioned wanting me to meet his family, when he started talking about moving in together. The pieces were falling into place with terrifying clarity. Adam hadn't just planned to steal our money. He'd planned to kill me. The house sale, the insurance policy, the Colombian escape plan. Once I was dead, he'd inherit everything, disappear with Fernanda's trust fund, and start over somewhere new. How? I asked. How was he planning to... Gerald's phone rang again. It was Jake. Gerald, you need to hear this. I just spoke to Adam's neighbor. She's been worried because she's seen strange men going in and out of his house at odd hours. She thought they might be drug dealers, but now I think they were contractors. What kind of contractors? Gerald asked. The kind who specialize in making home accidents look natural. Faulty wiring, gas leaks, carbon monoxide. I found invoices in the Pacific Northwest Development Group files. They paid $15,000 for emergency electrical repairs at Helen's address. Repairs that were never reported to the city and never completed. My blood turned to ice. Ethan, I whispered. Ethan is in that house right now. I was already reaching for my phone when Gerald stopped me. Helen, wait. If you call the house and wake him up, you might be walking into their timeline. If they've rigged something to look like an electrical fire or a gas explosion, then what do we do? Fernanda demanded. Let them kill a 9-year-old boy? Gerald was already dialing. I'm calling Seattle Fire Department for an emergency gas leak inspection. Anonymous tip. They'll evacuate the house immediately and sweep for any dangerous modifications. As we waited for confirmation that Ethan was safe, I felt something I'd never experienced before. The complete transformation from victim to predator. Adam had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. He hadn't just betrayed his wife or stolen money. He'd put my grandson's life in danger. Gerald, I said, my voice cold and steady, I want him destroyed. Completely. I want him to lose everything, go to prison for decades, and never be able to hurt another person again. Helen, I understand your anger, but we need to be strategic about this. If we move too fast... No, I interrupted. You don't understand. I've been strategic my whole life. I've been patient and careful and quiet. But my grandson almost died tonight because I underestimated what Adam was capable of. I stood up and walked to Gerald's desk, pulling out my checkbook. How much money do you need to hire the best investigators, the best prosecutors, and the best publicists in Seattle? Gerald stared at me. Helen, what are you planning? I'm planning to make sure that when Adam wakes up tomorrow, his entire world has collapsed. Every account frozen. Every asset seized. Every lie exposed. I wrote out a check for $100,000 and handed it to Gerald. And I'm planning to make sure the whole world knows exactly what kind of monster he is. Fernanda was watching me with something approaching awe. You're really going to destroy him. No, I corrected. We're going to destroy him. Together. Gerald's phone buzzed with a text. Ethan is safe. Fire department found evidence of tampered electrical wiring and a disconnected gas line in the basement. The house is condemned until repairs can be made. Relief flooded through me, immediately followed by rage so pure it felt like electricity in my veins. Gerald, I said, how quickly can we get warrants for Adam's arrest? With this evidence? By Monday morning. But Helen, he's supposed to leave for Colombia tomorrow night for his honeymoon. I smiled for the first time in hours. Perfect. I want him arrested at the airport, in front of all the other travelers, with news cameras rolling. And I want to be there when it happens, Fernanda added. As dawn broke over Seattle, we had our plan. 24 hours to gather the final evidence. 24 hours to coordinate with law enforcement. 24 hours before Adam Morrison learned that underestimating his mother was the biggest mistake of his criminal career. But first, I had one more call to make. Gerald, what's the number for the Seattle Times newsroom? The Seattle-Tacoma International Airport buzzed with Sunday evening travelers. The sound of rolling suitcases and departure announcements creating a symphony of routine journeys. But nothing about this evening would be routine for Adam Morrison. I sat in the airport restaurant with a clear view of the Alaska Airlines gate where Adam and Fernanda were supposed to board their 8:30 p.m. flight to Bogota. Fernanda, of course, wouldn't be on that plane. She was 3 tables away from me, wearing dark sunglasses and a baseball cap, her hands steady as she sipped coffee and waited for justice. Adam stood at the gate, checking his watch repeatedly. He wore khakis and a polo shirt, looking every inch the successful young businessman embarking on his honeymoon. His carry-on bag sat beside him, a bag that, according to Jake's investigation, contained forged documents, multiple fake IDs, and a laptop with instructions for transferring Fernanda's trust fund money to offshore accounts. What Adam didn't know was that 12 people in that terminal were there specifically for him. 2 FBI agents sat near the departure board, pretending to read newspapers. Gerald Hoffman was at the bookstore, his phone ready to live stream everything that was about to happen. Jake Morrison, the private investigator, sat with a Seattle Times reporter at the bar, cameras ready. And Fernanda's cousin Miguel had just walked through security with 2 Colombian federal agents who had flown in specifically to arrest Adam for international wire fraud. But the most important person in that terminal was 9-year-old Ethan, who sat beside me in a child-sized FBI windbreaker, clutching a folder full of the evidence that had started this entire investigation. "Grandma," Ethan whispered, "are you sure Daddy is really bad? Like, bad? I looked down at my grandson, this brave little boy who had risked everything to expose the truth. "Sweetheart, your daddy made some very bad choices, but that doesn't make you bad. And it doesn't mean you did anything wrong by telling the truth." The departure gate's PA system crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are now beginning pre-boarding for Alaska Airlines Flight 438 to Bogota, Colombia." Adam pulled out his phone and dialed. I knew exactly who he was calling. Fernanda, who wasn't answering because she was 50 feet away, watching him with the cold satisfaction of someone who had already won. After the 4th unanswered call, Adam's confident demeanor began to crack. He started pacing, running his hands through his hair, checking his watch obsessively. "Flight 438 to Bogota, we are now boarding all passengers in first class and our MVP Gold members." Adam approached the gate agent, his voice carrying across the terminal as anxiety crept into his tone. "Excuse me, I'm Adam Morrison. My wife and I are supposed to be on this flight, but she's running late. Can you tell me if she's checked in?" The gate agent, who had been briefed about our operation, shook her head sympathetically. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't see a Fernanda Morrison on our passenger manifest for this flight." Moment Viral 1. The Revelation of Power. Adam's confusion turned to panic as he realized something was seriously wrong. He pulled out his phone again, this time calling his office, probably looking for Diane or Patricia to help him figure out what was happening. That's when I stood up. I walked slowly toward the gate, my purse over my shoulder, my steps measured and deliberate. Adam was so focused on his phone call that he didn't notice me approaching until I was directly in front of him. "Hello, Adam." He spun around, his face cycling through surprise, confusion, and annoyance. "Mom, what are you doing here? Where's Fernanda?" "Fernanda is safe," I said calmly, "which is more than I can say for you." Adam's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I opened my purse slowly and pulled out 3 manila envelopes. I set them on the table next to the gate podium, one by one, each landing with the soft thud of finality. "Envelope number 1, I said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, "contains evidence of your theft of $85,000 from your wife's inheritance." Adam's face went white. "Mom, what are you talking about? You're embarrassing yourself." "Envelope number 2, I continued, opening the second folder, "contains evidence of your wire fraud involving Fernanda's $200,000 trust fund and your fake Colombian business investment." Several passengers had stopped to watch what was obviously becoming a family confrontation. Adam glanced around nervously, then leaned closer to me. "Mom, you need to stop this right now. You don't understand what you're—" "Envelope number 3, I said, opening the final folder and speaking loud enough for everyone within 50 feet to hear clearly, "contains evidence that you forged my signature to sell my house without my knowledge, took out a $2 million life insurance policy on me, and hired contractors to rig my home's electrical system to kill me and my grandson." The gate area went completely silent. Passengers stopped mid-conversation. Children stopped crying. Even the PA announcements seemed to pause. Adam stammered, That's insane. Mom, you're having some kind of breakdown. Final boarding call for Flight 438 to Bogota? And here's what you didn't know about your poor, helpless mother, I continued, my voice carrying clearly across the terminal. I have $1.2 million in investment accounts, $800,000 in real estate, and enough evidence to put you in federal prison for the next 30 years. Adam stumbled backward as if I'd physically struck him. That's impossible. You're a retired teacher living on Social Security. I let you believe that, I said coldly, because I wanted to see exactly what kind of man you'd become. Congratulations, Adam. You became a monster. Moment viral 2. The arrival of justice. The sound of rapid footsteps echoed across the terminal, and Adam turned to see what was approaching. 6 law enforcement officers were walking toward our gate. 2 FBI agents, 2 Seattle police detectives, and 2 Colombian federal agents. Adam Morrison, the lead FBI agent, called out, her voice official and commanding. You need to come with us. Adam's knees buckled. He grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself, his carry-on bag falling to the floor with a crash that scattered fake IDs and forged documents across the terminal carpet. This is a mistake, he said, his voice cracking. I haven't done anything wrong. Agent Sarah Chen stepped forward, handcuffs already in her hands. Adam Morrison, you are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and international money laundering. As the handcuffs clicked around Adam's wrists, passengers throughout the gate area began taking out their phones, recording everything. This wasn't just an arrest. It was about to become viral content. You have the right to remain silent, Agent Chen continued. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Mom! Adam screamed, struggling against the handcuffs. You can't let them do this to me. I'm your son. Moment viral. 3. The final confrontation. I stepped closer to Adam, close enough that only he could hear my words. My son died when you decided to murder your own mother for insurance money, I said quietly. The man standing here is a stranger who happens to share my DNA. Adam's face contorted with rage and desperation. Everything I did was for our family, for our future. You never understood. I understood perfectly, I interrupted. You thought I was weak. You thought I was stupid. You thought I was disposable. I paused, letting him see the steel in my eyes. You were wrong on all 3 counts. As the agents began leading Adam away, he made one last desperate attempt to manipulate me. Mom, please, think about Ethan. He needs his father. I looked at my grandson, who was watching from across the terminal with a mixture of sadness and relief. Then I looked back at Adam. Ethan deserves better than a father who's a criminal, I said. He deserves better than a father who tried to kill his grandmother. The Colombian federal agents stepped forward, and one of them addressed the growing crowd of onlookers. This individual is also wanted in Colombia for defrauding multiple families of their life savings through fake real estate investments. He will be extradited after serving his sentence in the United States. As Adam was led away in handcuffs, passengers throughout the terminal burst into spontaneous applause. Flight attendants were leaning out of jetways to watch. Even airport security guards were recording with their phones. Fernanda approached from across the terminal, pulling off her sunglasses and baseball cap. When Adam saw her, his face went through one final transformation, from desperate hope to absolute devastation. Fernanda, he called out. Baby, tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Fernanda walked up to him slowly, her voice carrying clearly across the now silent terminal. The only misunderstanding was thinking you could steal from me, lie to me, and try to murder your own mother without consequences. She turned to the crowd of passengers who were still recording. Ladies and gentlemen, this man tried to steal $500,000 from me on our wedding day. He's a predator who targets women with money, and he just got caught. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause as Adam was finally led away, his protests fading as he disappeared through the security checkpoint. Gerald approached with his phone still recording. Helen, do you have anything you'd like to say to the camera? I looked directly into the lens, thinking about all the other women who might be watching, all the other families who might be dealing with their own Adams. Trust your instincts, I said clearly. If someone seems too good to be true, investigate them. And never, ever let anyone convince you that family loyalty means accepting criminal behavior. As the crowd began to disperse and normal airport operations resumed, Ethan ran over and hugged my legs tightly. "Grandma," he said, looking up at me, "are we going to be okay now?" I picked him up, this brave little boy who had saved both our lives, and held him close. "Sweetheart," I said, "we're going to be more than okay. We're going to be free." 6 months later, I stood on the deck of our new home on Bainbridge Island, watching Ethan feed the ducks at the pond behind our property. The morning sun filtered through the Douglas fir trees, and the smell of salt water from Puget Sound mixed with the aroma of fresh coffee from my kitchen. Everything about my life had changed. Gone was the gray-haired woman in worn cardigans who had sat invisible at that wedding reception. I'd cut my hair into a modern bob with silver highlights that caught the light. My old wardrobe of faded blouses and comfortable shoes had been replaced with well-fitted jeans, colorful sweaters, and hiking boots that actually fit properly. But the biggest change wasn't visible. It was the way I carried myself now, with the confidence of someone who had fought a war and won. Our new house was a craftsman-style home with large windows and an open floor plan that made entertaining easy. The kitchen island where I now prepared breakfast was twice the size of my old one, and the guest room upstairs was already furnished for Fernanda, who visited every weekend and had become the daughter I'd never had. "Grandma Helen," Ethan called from the dock. "The mama duck has 4 babies now." I smiled, watching him throw breadcrumbs with the careful precision of a 9-year-old who took his responsibilities seriously. He'd grown taller in the past 6 months, and the worried expression he'd worn for so long had been replaced by genuine childhood joy. The legal proceedings had been swift and decisive. Adam pled guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 25 years in federal prison instead of 30. Diane, his aunt and co-conspirator, received 15 years for her role in the fraud ring. Patricia, the assistant, had testified against both of them in exchange for 5 years probation and full restitution to their victims. The media coverage had been extraordinary. The wedding reception takedown, as CNN had dubbed it, had been viewed over 50 million times across various platforms. I'd received interview requests from every major network, though I'd only accepted 3, choosing to focus on helping other victims rather than reliving my own story. The most satisfying outcome had been financial. Through Gerald's aggressive legal work, we'd recovered every penny Adam had stolen, plus damages. Fernanda got her inheritance and trust fund back with interest. The house Adam had illegally sold was returned to me, though I'd decided to sell it legitimately and use the proceeds for our new life. But more importantly, we'd uncovered a network of similar crimes. Jake Morrison's investigation had identified 17 other victims across Washington, Oregon, and California. The FBI had established a task force specifically to investigate romance and family financial fraud, using our case as the template. Fernanda had surprised everyone by quitting her bank job and enrolling in law school at the University of Washington. "I want to prosecute people like Adam," she'd told me over dinner last month. "I want to make sure other women don't go through what I went through." She'd also started dating someone new, a professor at UW who specialized in financial crimes and treated her with the respect and honesty she deserved. They'd been together for 3 months, and I'd never seen her happier. My phone buzzed with a text from Gerald. Judge finalized the restitution payments. Sarah Caldwell in Portland received her $180,000 this morning. She cried when I called her. Sarah had been Adam's first wife, the one whose police report had been mysteriously dropped 2 years ago. She'd lost her entire divorce settlement to Adam's scheme, but now she could finally rebuild her life. I'd established the Morrison Family Fraud Recovery Foundation with $500,000 of my own money, providing legal assistance and financial counseling to victims of family member financial abuse. We'd already helped 12 families, and the foundation was growing every month. The irony wasn't lost on me that Adam's attempt to steal my money had ultimately resulted in me using that money to help his other victims. Ethan ran back to the house, his cheeks red from the morning cold. "Grandma, can Fernanda come for pancakes when she gets here?" "Of course, sweetheart. She should be here in about an hour." As I mixed pancake batter, I thought about the letter that had arrived yesterday, Adam's first communication since his sentencing. He'd written from federal prison, claiming he was sorry, saying he'd made mistakes, asking if Ethan could visit him. I'd thrown it away without finishing it. Some bridges once burned should stay burned. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Adam had chosen to become a predator, and now he would live with the consequences of that choice. But Ethan would live with different consequences. The consequence of having a grandmother who fought back, who showed him that justice exists, who demonstrated that family isn't about blood, but about love, respect, and protection. The sound of gravel crunching in our driveway announced Fernanda's arrival. Through the window, I watched her get out of her new Honda CR-V, practical, reliable, paid for with her own money and chosen by her own judgment. "Aunt Fernanda's here," Ethan shouted, using the title she'd earned through loyalty rather than marriage. As we sat around the breakfast table 30 minutes later, sharing pancakes and planning our day, I realized something profound had happened. We'd become a real family, not because of genetics or legal documents, but because we'd chosen each other. Fernanda was telling Ethan about her constitutional law class when she paused and looked at me seriously. "Helen, I have something to tell you. The professor I've been dating, Michael, he asked me to marry him last night." Ethan dropped his fork. "Are you going to say yes?" Fernanda laughed. "I said I needed to ask my family first." She looked at both of us. "What do you think?" I reached across the table and took her hand. "I think you should marry whoever makes you happy, treats you with respect, and never asks you to be less than you are. He's already signed a prenup," she said with a grin. "And he insisted on it. Said he wanted to make sure I knew he was marrying me, not my money." Smart man. As we finished breakfast and prepared for our Saturday hike on the island's trails, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at me bore little resemblance to the invisible retiree who had sat at that wedding reception 6 months ago. But the biggest change wasn't in how I looked, it was in how I felt. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. My name is Helen Morrison. I'm 69 years old, and this is the story of how I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them most.